The Economic and Political Weekly is unique. It has been published every week for 50 years. And that makes it a remarkable intellectual institution for concerned citizens.
And in fact, the EPW is playing the role of an educator, trying to arouse your conscience.
I read the journal with great interest, and I think the basic idea that academic work has to be for the people, to be able to understand, to comment on, discuss, criticize, reject, and celebrate. Well, my early connections with the journal, of course, was not with EPW, which was before it was born, but with Economic Weekly, which was started in the late 40s by Sachin Chaudhary, who was a family friend. A great memory of wonderful talk about what good journalism is on the Juhu Beach. It must have been 1956 or something like that. And then I found myself writing to Economic Weekly.
The Economic Weekly was born on January 1, 1949, founded by Sachin Chaudhary.
I knew Sachin Chaudhary, but I can't say that I knew him well. I knew him, and he was a grandee, he was a grandee. And he had a lot of well-wishers and a lot of admirers. So he didn't bother very much about raising money. And then, of course, you need money. You need to raise money in order to run on a regular basis a weekly magazine.
The legendary Bombay Talkies producer, Hiten Chaudhary, encouraged his brother Sachin to set up the Economic Weekly and introduced him to the Seksaria family who financed the magazine.
Sachin Chaudhary, initially, he was getting some finance from a private trading corporate body. Then, because he thought they were being slightly intimidating, he just closed the journal, and the beginning was the Economic and Political Weekly.
On December 25, 1965, the Economic Weekly closed down due to differences with the financiers, the Seksaria family. In 1966, an appeal by over 60 leading economists and academicians for financial contributions resulted in the formation of the Samiksha Trust. On August 20, 1966, the Economic and Political Weekly was born.
They could not retain the Economic Weekly name because that was under the Seksarias. So it was recoined Economic and Political Weekly.
I take pride in the fact that I am one of the few surviving contributors to the Economic Weekly before it became the Economic and Political Weekly.
Sachin was very excited about starting it, and it got started. Unfortunately, he didn't live long after that. but it went to the able hands of Krishnaraj afterward.
After the unexpected demise of Sachin Chaudhary on December 20, 1966, Dr. R.K. Hazare became the editor from 1967 to 1969. In 1969, Krishnaraj became the editor of the Economic and Political Weekly.
And Krishnaraj really made the Economic and Political Weekly what it really became. It was Krishnaraj's contribution. He was a wonderful man. He was a wonderful man and indefatigable. He would go everywhere and solicit articles from people.
Krishnaraj had great qualities of managing people. Although the organization didn't have much money, people worked for the love of the person. And he saw to it that the salary range is not much different from the office boy to his own salary. He kept a kind of a balance there.
The Economic and Political Weekly presented itself differently to different categories of readers. It contained a whole range of articles under the different sections of the journal.
In some ways, it is composed of 3 parts, maybe even 4, because there's the unsigned edits. Maybe 5 parts, because the first is the letters, which are often very interesting. So 2 pages of letters, sometimes carrying on. Then, of course, the unsigned edits. Then the commentaries, which are fantastic field reports from parts of India like Northeast and the tribal areas which other newspapers and magazines don't write about. Then book reviews, then special articles. And then sometimes discussion. And now, of course, you've added a 7th part, which is postscript. Right. So actually, though it is, you're right. I mean, broadly, it is 1 part for the informed general reader, 1 part for the scholar. Broadly, it's 2 parts. But even within that, there's so many different sections.
I think nobody could possibly read all of it in a week, and then you'd be just doing that and nothing else. So it did offer that kind of range, and it still continues to offer. I think that kind of.
No, I mean, I think the range that EPW is good at is quite mind-boggling. I don't keep up with all the debates at all. But in our field for nutrition, child health and child nutrition, social policy, there isn't any decent journal for social policy in India, and EPW is really the only reasonable space to publish. So they were very good papers in terms of both techniques and empirical work, very rigorous kinds of papers, but still written in an accessible kind of way.
Village studies in India really owe a lot to the then Economic Weekly, just as the then Economic Weekly itself owes something to village studies. Detailed empirical accounts of the Indian village from various parts of the country.
At that time, Alice Thorner thought EPW should bring out a review of women's studies, because by then women's studies had sort of established in India. So we both approached Krishnaraj, that was in Itkari House. So Alice and I edited 1 or 2 issues. Then Alice went back to Paris, and she felt she didn't know enough about Indian women's studies, etc. So I was left to manage it myself.
On January 17, 2004, Krishnaraj passed away. From 2004 to 2016, Dr. C. Ram Manohar Reddy was editor of the Economic and Political Weekly. Witness, chronicler, analyst. Indeed, the history of post-independence India is the history of the EPW. And although EPW's home is India, its concerns are global.
When the EPW was about to complete 25 years of its existence, Krishnaraj and I were deliberating on how best we could celebrate the occasion. Suddenly one fine morning, he asked me if I could leave the Reserve Bank and take up the directorship of this institution. Though I was occupying a very senior position in the Reserve Bank as head of the research department of the Reserve Bank, I thought this was an excellent opportunity for me to come back to the academic world. I took it up. Eventually, it has grown to be today one of the important sources of data for the research workers.
We have two sets of subscribers. One is institution, another one is individuals. But predominantly, our subscriber base is institutions. It includes most of the IIMs, most of the IITs, all ICSR institutes, many government departments, and top-ranked management institutions, several private universities, and so on.
There are certain qualities to the EPW literature that adds to that, in my view. One is the interdisciplinary character of the journal and the fact that, for example, somebody like me who is trained in economics has a chance to learn from experts from other disciplines. Second one is that even within the economic discipline, in EPW, I will be reading material that draws on a broader kind of evidence than what tends to be published in professional journals, where there's a tendency to insist on very strong criteria of evidence, which makes sense for a professional journal, but restricts the knowledge that we have access to. And thirdly, EPW has space not only for analysis, but also for views, and that I think is very important.
The great thing about EPW has been that articles, for instance, which could not be placed, for instance, in a law magazine because it didn't seem law enough, in a sociology journal because it didn't seem sociology enough, economics journal because it didn't seem economics enough. It didn't matter. What mattered was what you were saying. And EPW offered that space. If not for EPW, the kind of traction that the ideas got, even in the little amount of work that I've done, it wouldn't have got.
Not only the media, but even the radical left parties unconsciously ignored the diversity of India, problem of the Adivasis, problem of the Dalits, and so on. And it is EPW somehow, got it right from the beginning. And even now, when you open any issue of EPW, you see the variety of India. Consider a remote, out-of-the-way place, preponderantly tribal. There, a college teacher, he finds something important, something that talks to him, not in the national media, so-called national media, but in the EPW.
This is Government College, Bomdila, West Kameng district of Arunachal Pradesh. EPW plays a very, unique place in the academic circle. And of course, when I joined as a principal, when I was a teacher also in this particular college, we used to read and provoke the students to go to this particular magazine.
I'm a PhD scholar at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. I also teach at the Department of Public Policy, St. Xavier's College, Mumbai. EPW has been a very, very important part of my academic career. I started reading EPW when I was a BA first-year student at the University of Delhi. Coming from the field of development studies, the EPW has contributed in my academic career by supplying some of the key debates, the contours of some of the key debates in the field of social sciences to us, the readers. I can think of beginning with the mode of production debate that took place for more than 30 years in the pages of EPW. In the 90s, there was the Great Indian Poverty Debate. In the early 2000s, I have followed the debate between Professor Gopal Guru and Professor Sandur Sarkai on the Dalit experience and theory. And later, again, a very significant debate that took place on food and nutrition in India between Professor Jean Dreze and Professor Utsa Patnaik of JNU. In my master's degree, I also got a chance to publish my first academic article in the pages of the EPW, and it was a really very, very important, a significant landmark, a milestone in my academic career.
I think EPW is very much, in the life of small towns and for NGOs particularly. It's been a very important resource, both in terms of, learning about issues and understanding contemporary research, but also contributing, because again, it's one of those journals that has consistently documented the voice of those doing work on the ground.
Now, if you ask me, what were the high points? I mean, I wouldn't be able to tell you specific events, but, certain broad sets of events, One is, for me, the greatest pleasure would be when you would get some article from Gorakhpur or from Tiruchi, and from some unknown person, unsought, unknown, from a small town, small college, and then you work with that person, and it comes out as not only publishable, but it makes a point, and then the ecstasy in the writer that, look, these are not gates which are closed.
I was in the Nagpur Central Prison for almost 4 years and 8 months. The normal newspapers were a window, but you would get one type of stereotyped views in those newspapers. So when we asked EPW to send us copies, and they obliged, and they kept sending us free copies of the magazine, actually it was something to look forward to. And sharing with other political prisoners. And in fact, I remember tearing off pages and sending it by post to prisoners in Hazaribagh, Hyderabad jail, other jails in India, and send our views through letters and keep our political activism alive also in jail.
I think with respect to the work that I'm doing currently in Basta, it is one of the magazines which has taken up the issue of the ongoing conflict in Basta quite seriously and has been consistently writing really great pieces on it. That's the only place where you actually see serious discussion on issues. My particular piece of interest is the issue around Adivasis, not just related to Basta, but everywhere in central India. When it comes to Jharkhand, when it comes to Orissa, and when it comes to the various land conflict that's going on over here, has been fairly well represented in the writings in EPW. Again, that's an issue that we don't get to see in mainstream writing, but that again is a topic that has been touched upon, and very wonderful work has come into our notice because of EPW.
I began with Dalit studies and Dalit question basically. Dalit studies would be a big word, but I began with the Dalit question. Dalit question as it took shape in terms of politics, in terms of social practices, atrocities, and theorization of caste question. All that formed the part of Dalit question, and that was possible only through the pages of EPW, because other journals had their own disciplinary limits, protocol limits. But here you find that this is a very enabling journal. EPW's intervention in terms of the formal politics was actually was something to really make people serious about issues of caste, compel them to take caste questions seriously, not as a rhetorical agenda, but as a very substantive engagement on an everyday basis.
It should keep a watchful eye on the establishment, no matter who controlled the establishment. Whether it's business or bureaucracy or whatever, it was the EPW's responsibility to keep a watchful eye.
Policy making is enormously complex in a democratic polity. Political and economic governance have to measure up to expectations of a vast majority of people. Today, Economic Political Weekly is a much larger organization, and it has positioned itself, in effect, as a responsible and constructive opposition. This is something which no policymaker can afford to miss.
For all its contributions to those who formulate public policy, the social activists and the concerned and informed citizens, EPW preserves its core as an academic journal. EPW figures highly in the prestigious Elsevier rankings in multiple categories. Highest in India among 37 Indian social science journals. Second highest in Asia among 187 social science journals. Highest in Asia among 38 journals in the category Economics, Econometrics and Finance. 37th among 881 journals globally. Highest in Asia among 23 journals in the category Sociology and Political Science. 17th among 951 journals globally. Always in the second quartile globally. Between 2009 and 2015, EPW citations in 3 categories: Economics, Econometrics and Finance, Political Science and International Relations, and Sociology and Political Science, were always in the second quartile of all citations recorded globally in the Scopus database. The critical perspective that EPW often took on establishment and public policies led at one point to a debate whether EPW was dedicated to leftist views.
During Sachin Chaudhary's days, it was considered a left weekly. It was amazing how Krishnaraj, who had also started with a very firm leftist view, he had the courage and the conviction to open the weekly to other influences and opinions. And I think the biggest change came with 91 when Manmohan Singh came in and reform was introduced, etc. Krishnaraj shifted from promoting state-led development to more market economy, and state should do things which it ought to do, education, health, etc., etc. There was a big backlash from the leftist. Ashok Mitra wrote, Krishnaraj had turned right.
ये बात सही है कि अभी लेफ्ट राइट, लेफ्ट ऑफ द सेंटर, राइट ऑफ द सेंटर, इन शब्दों का जो मतलब था उसमें काफ़ी अंतर आया है और मैं स्वयं तो इसमें विश्वास भी नहीं करता। हमारे लिए मैं खुद का वर्णन या हमारी विचारधारा का वर्णन कोई राइटिस्ट विचारधारा ऐसा बिल्कुल नहीं करूँगा और हम मानते हैं कि हम सेंट्रिस्ट हैं और लेफ्ट हैज़ परहैप्स, आई मीन लेफ्टिज्म एज सच परहैप्स very little of it is remained as such, although there are leftist political parties and they proclaim to be left, and rightly so, nothing wrong about it. मगर हमारे देश में विचारधारा को सुप्रतिष्ठित करने के जो माध्यम रहे उसमें एक EPW रहा, मतलब उसने वो एक स्थान एक्वायर किया, पहले से था और कोई था नहीं, तो उसके द्वारा एक ही विचारधारा को सुप्रतिष्ठित किया गया। ऐसा न होता तो अच्छा होता था, इन द सेंस आपने 4 लोगों को EPW ने अवसर दिया, उन्होंने लिखा, जैसे डॉक्टर स्वामी आपने कहा, मनमोहन सिंह, विच इज़ फेयर इनफ, मगर लगता है कि वो एक एक्सेप्शन है। आम तौर पर स्पेक्ट्रम जो आइडियोलॉजी का है उसमें आज जिनको आप बीजेपी की विचारधारा, आरएसएस की, या हम कहेंगे कि राष्ट्रवाद की विचार जो भी है, इस विचारधारा के अनुकूल कुछ लिखा गया है या इनके आधिकारिक प्रवक्ताओं को कुछ लिखने का अवसर मिला है, ऐसा हुआ नहीं है। और इसलिए हुआ ये, इसके लिए मैं कोई EPW को कटघरे में नहीं खड़ा कर रहा हूँ, मगर हमारे देश में जो डिबेट है, जो डिस्कोर्स है, वो हमेशा लॉपसाइडेड रहा। ए पर्टिकुलर आइडियोलॉजी और वन में से ए ग्रुप ऑफ आइडियोलॉजीज वॉज ऑलवेज कंसिडर्ड एज इलेजिटिमेट।
Once again,
so how would you describe it? I mean, as a...
Yeah, I would say it's a, you see, when I meant that it's a forum where every kind of opinion is accommodated. So that's why I call it a parliament of ideas.
So while the editorial perspective and in the selection of articles, one looked for well-argued pieces, there were also certain, when you said everything didn't go, just because it was well argued. I would, as I said, that I would never publish, and I never did publish any article which came remotely close to justifying the destruction of the Babri Masjid. So that's what one means by, not means by, that's why I was attracted by your description of it as a parliament of ideas rather than as a left journal.
One of the things is it depends on one's own predilections, one's own political views and opinions that have been formed over a period of time. If I look at EPW from that point of view, I would think that it is a kind of liberal, not left enough for the leftists to, make it their own, but it has a quality of questioning and a quality of looking at the world beyond that of purely ideological position. But of course, like most liberal writing, except in the United States, would, by its very nature, particularly in our country, would be leaning slightly to the left anyway.
I think that is a space that's much needed. It is a place where people do debate. This is a place where Nandini Sundar had a debate with the Maoist spokesperson, and it was a very necessary debate to have.
EPW is wonderful that way. It is both a home and a battleground. Everybody is in there, and so you know that you can actually be read by and read people with completely opposing perspectives coming at a particular issue from the opposite direction, having a completely different interpretation or analysis, and with those who actually have a completely different disciplinary approach as well.
There are now people who read the EPW on the phone. When I left 6 months ago, the growth in readership was more on the phone than on the computer. Yeah.
After Ram Manohar Reddy stepped down in March 2016, Paranjoy Guha Thakurta worked as editor of EPW between April 2016 and July 2017. EPW continues to evolve. Its online edition is now being increasingly accessed by a whole new generation of readers.
There's a whole new generation of young academic scholars and serious readers who are increasingly reading on their mobile and desktop screens. And our task as a journal becomes to not only enable a wider readership so that they're able to access all kinds of articles that are there in archives, but also to enable newer formats in which digital research can be consumed.
EPW will have to evolve, obviously, because the media world now evolves very fast, and then I'm sure that EPW will have to evolve as well.
I am not for a moment suggesting that the quality of the material that is published should be changed at all. The readership remains an extremely serious readership, both amongst general readers and amongst academics. And that quality has to be maintained. There's absolutely no doubt regarding that. But what I mean by accessibility is that what the net allows you to do is to draw in information from a variety of sources. You're not limited to one source, but one bit of reading from one text will trigger off the need for reading from another text, and then it goes on, and by the time you are finished, you really have a range of views before you. That kind of outreach can be much more easily handled through these new technologies that have come in to assist people in their readings and in their access to quality readings that are available.
We would very much like that the circulation of economic and political weekly increases, that we are able to reach out to younger readers who make the future of the Republic of India. But in so doing, we do not wish to change what the economic and political weekly is. The Economic and Political Weeklies has strengths that deserve both recognition and emphasis. Its autonomy and independence, its diversity and pluralism, a crucible for ideas and concerns, and its international profile.